Well, good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, March 20th, 2025, and we are back for another live broadcast. Yes. Good morning, Lisa Maria. Let me see here. I think I've got to get bear with me here. All right. Let's see here. With me here. All right. Oh, got it. Clip. There we go. Good morning, Lisa Maria. Good morning, Valerie James. It's nice to see you. Good morning, Terry. All right. Lucky Chucky's here. Good morning, Lucky Chucky. Oh, let's see. We have B. Bethany is here. Good morning, B. Bethany. So we are going to have a special live today, it looks like. We have, oh, hold on one second. Let me see if I can get Alex on here. We're trying to get him. Well, good morning, Alex.
Good morning.
So I was just doing a little house cleaning here. We've got Lisa Maria here. We've got Christy B, one of our subscribers. We have Terry Dykes, a subscriber. We have Christy B 78 from Hayesville, Kansas here. Tanya Moonsheimer here as well. Painter is here. Share Baby 29, one of our subscribers, is here. Boy, we are filling up, Alex.
That's all right. Welcome in, everybody. Good morning. Good morning.
So as I was telling everyone, we have our Jeff Code here. Good morning, our Jeff Code, and Nana's here. So as I was telling everybody that we're expecting a special guest today, Sydney, and I'm expecting him around 9 o'clock. And we're going to have a pretty deep dive on some of the things happening in Canada. Hey, we have Captain Graybeard here. Good morning, Captain. Susie Kabluzzi, one of our subscribers, is here. Good morning. Good morning, Deanna. Glad you could make it. Choose Your Poison is here as well. Welcome, Choose Your Poison. Good morning, Dark Horse. Glad you could make it. So, as I said, we've got Sydney is going to be joining us, I think, this morning. We're expecting him anyway. Oh, and we have the Leftist Tears coffee cup. I love it. Good man. Hey, let's give everybody a quick update on your mom. How's everything going?
She's resting comfortably, surrounded by family and love, guys. Sleeping probably 20 out of 24 hours right now. So
yeah, to be expected, I would think.
Yeah.
Well,
gold hit 3,075 overnight.
Holy cannoli. Holy cannoli. Share Baby 29, a subscriber, said, love that coffee cup, Alex. There you go. Interstate Inmate James is here. Good morning, James. So, as I said, Alex and I are going to be on screen initially until we have Sydney on the screen. And I wonder, Alex, if I can send him a request. How do I do that?
You just simply click the share button and share to him. He should pop up in your list there at the top.
Let's see here.
That's one way. Or when he gets in, he'll make a request.
I see the share. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can do it that way. Share.
Thank you, Susie Kabluzzi. I appreciate it.
Let's see here. Bear with us, everybody. I'm trying to get our guest here on. Boy, I wonder if there's a way that I could search as opposed to scroll through.
There is. So the little icons at the top, if you slide all the way.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Okay, so SID. There we go. I found him. Okay. All right. So, I sent it.
In other news, XRP this morning is at 142.5 billion, set to overtake Tether at 143.6.
Oh, wow, that's big news.
It could be a good day. Could be a real good day.
It sure seems like it. So, Susie Kabluzzi, one of our subscribers, said, Alex, we're sending lots of love and hugs and prayers to you and your family. Thank you, Susie.
Yep. Thank you very much, Susie.
Lynn Brooks is here. Coach B is here. Good morning, Coach. Susie Kabluzzi sent some hearts. Scratch 65, one of our subscribers, is here. Glad you could make it, Scratch. So I don't see Sydney yet, so we're just going to kind of dive into a recap here. Is there anything other than XRP and that you want to highlight before we move into the recap?
I mean, I think the movement that's happening overnight for us is, I think, pretty indicative of kind of what the rest of the world is doing while we're all sleeping.
Yeah.
Lots of news this week in, the Fed coming out and holding interest rates, the end of the SEC case against Ripple. I'm seeing lots of reports floating around that the banks of Japan are potentially putting a Ripple solution in place for banking systems over there. There's a lot happening, folks. There's a lot happening.
Wow.
Not financial advice, just me being a nerd and perusing the web.
Exactly. Paul Rick is here over on YouTube. Welcome, Paul, in Central Missouri. We have Wyatt Bennett over on YouTube. We have Barbie, one of our subscribers, just made it. You didn't miss much yet, Barbie. We're just getting warmed up. So glad you could make it. So, all right. Well, let's just see what we can get here. We'll see if Sydney shows up at some point. First off, we have, Alpha Warrior talking about the JFK files that were released recently and talking about, of all places, where was it that Lee Harvey Oswald was staying? It was at the YMCA. How crazy is that, Alex? Oh my gosh.
I sent you a video this morning. There's a video floating around of our favorite 47th president dancing back in the 70s, and then it brings it to the current. I just sent it so you could brush up on your dance moves. So if we get to 50,000 likes today, Sam will do a little Trump shuffle for us.
Exactly. Well, I found it really interesting that, of all places, the YMCA, which happens to be the theme song that President Trump uses at all of his rallies. Interesting development there. Share baby 20. Well, actually, first of all, TikTok, double tap that screen, share this live out if you would. If you'd like to contribute to our our tiny daily goal, that would be wonderful. And also, as most of you know, we do have subscriptions available now on TikTok. And here's the thing, you guys. If you do subscribe, or when you do subscribe, I'm going to follow you back. It's the original me. It's not one of the fake accounts. So if you do become a subscriber, you will see me follow you back. Know that it's actually me, just so you know. So Barbie said, has anyone read the JFK files yet? Yes, we're digging through them, Barbie. It's going to take a little time. There's a lot there. 80 Deuce Cab is here. Hey, 80 Deuce, Lisa Maria saying, tapping away. Yeah, you just want me to dance. I know, Lisa Maria. Christy B just sent a bunch of tiny dinies. Thank you, Christy. So let's see. We have $175 million of UPenn funds were frozen over the trans women debate. And I find it very interesting how many other endowments and federal funding are going to be grabbed by the Patriots and President Trump. Is that how he's going to fund the America University? For you, those of you who don't know, President Trump said that he's going to create something called the American Academy or the American University. And essentially what he's saying is education will be free for everyone in America. And I'm wondering if he isn't going to grab some of those endowments that are there and utilize them for this America fund. I don't know, but it sure seems like that could be the direction it's going. What do you think, Alex?
the sovereign wealth fund and how that's all going to play out. I think gold and him announcing crypto and all of these things that we're moving into the asset pool for the country. It'll be really interesting to see how that gets redistributed to the middle class, and puts us back to a position where GDP of the middle class, 50% of our GDP will be the middle class, and that's where we were in the 70s when they pulled us off of the gold standard.
Right, right. Well, and we've talked a lot about the monetary switch. That switch is here, and my guess is it's probably running parallel to the SWIFT system. And is it going to be a combination of precious metals, blockchain? Who knows? But I think we're smack dab in the middle of it. Hey, Christine Thomas just became a subscriber. Welcome, Christine. Glad you could join us.
Interstate became a subscriber also.
Oh, slow down, James. Thanks, James. Glad you're part of. Well, you're already part of the inner circle. Just like Beth Sutton is here. Hey, Beth, glad you could make it. Or just like Beth Sutton, I guess I should say. So again, this whole monetary switch is taking place. We're seeing a lot of transitions. We noticed yesterday that the Federal Reserve did not lower interest rates, which I found very interesting. What does that mean? Well, I think that they know if they lower interest rates, inflation's going to go up, the dollar's going to be, in jeopardy already. And President Trump's made it pretty clear he wants the dollar to stay as the reserve currency for the world. How that's going to work out, boy, your guess is as good as mine, but I'm really interested to see how that moves forward. And as we said earlier, the SEC officially dropped the Ripple lawsuit. Does that mean that we're looking at XRP going to the moon? Well, how much is it up today, Alex?
It wasn't a huge jump. It's kind of settled a little. We're at 244 right now, down 4%. But over the last week, we're up 7%. So again, it's the long game. If you go back to October, November, it was 50 cents, folks.
Yeah,
it's at 244 today.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
The long game. Long game.
ShareBaby29 said that Soros building in India was raided yesterday. Yeah, ShareBaby, I did see that. I didn't get a lot of details, but I think when you look at the executive orders 13818, 13848, there are things taking place in the background in terms of seizing people's, corporations, and entities' funds that the Patriots are all over. And I think that's an example of it. It looks like at this point. We have, let's see here. Susie Kabluzzi just sent a whole bunch of tiny dinies. Thank you, Susie. Painter said, nice glasses, Alex.
It's a filter. You can use it too.
Christy B78 sent a bunch of tiny dinies. Virgo 47 just made it. So good morning, late as usual. That's all right, Virgo 47. Glad you're here.
Quick, if Sydney's viewing or watching, Sydney, you're going to have to click the multi-guest at the bottom and click request so that we see you if you're in here.
Yeah, I did send him a link. I don't know whether I'm assuming it went through, but I don't know. Okay, well, Hokey Gigi just sent a rose. Thank you, Hokey. John Gwynn just sent a bunch of tiny dinies. Thank you, John Gwynn. Let's see. So we have more developments here. So there's a group of senators in Congress that are saying that a bombshell Trump Russia hoax document dump will expose the FBI corruption. Well, if we look at that from a perspective of Kash Patel being in charge of the FBI, my guess is that we are looking at some significant developments when it comes to that whole so-called, Russia hoax. I, for one, am looking forward to seeing that. I can't wait to see those little squirms squirm in their seats and bitch and complain and whine when they get perp walked with silver bracelets out of the Congress. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Contingency plan for something catastrophic happening to more than 100 members?
Oh, that's right. That's right. There is something about that in the books, isn't there? Exactly.
Very strange.
Very
strange, sir.
Well, what do you always say? Truth is much much stranger than fiction.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Mateo Leonidas Garcia said, "What's your thoughts on XLM?"
It's another one to watch, right? You have to do your homework and understand the utility of the coin and the network and understanding. Let's look at XLM this morning.
While you do that, I'm going to do a little house cleaning here. George Loftus 247 said, "Good morning." Good morning. Deanna said, "Thoughts on Tesla stocks?" Hokey Gigi sent a rose. John Gwynn sent a bunch of tiny dinies. Hokey Gigi sent more tiny dinies. Thank you so much. We have Painter saying yes. Oh, I guess he's talking about the XL. Let's see what comes up with on the XLM. What'd you come up with, Alex?
Well, if I could type, my fingers are cold. It's cold in Kansas this morning, Sam.
Is it?
Yeah. XLM.
Hey, Randy Auckland's here. Hey, Randy.
Current market cap is 8 billion, 8.7 billion. That's stellar lumens, if anybody wants to know. And if you look at it over a year, it's up 110% at 28 cents.
Wow.
So the long game. Again, understanding what each of the networks is going to do once we flip that switch is a good place to start.
Right.
If a crypto comes out or you hear of a crypto, do your homework and find as much information as you can about the company that's creating that blockchain. I had a friend message me yesterday that someone had sent them a link to QFS and this and that and secure your financial future and whatever. And something I do when I'm vetting people that are sending me links, when you click on a link that somebody sent you and you scroll to the bottom of that website, if there is not company info, address, legal disclaimers, like all of the things that a legitimate company is going to have, if you can't find the company information, most likely it is a rug pull scam. They make all these promises that you're going to get free this and free that. Just sign up. You end up putting your money in, and then somebody comes along and pulls the plug. The website's gone. Your crypto's gone. You just got to be smart, folks. Don't fall for the quick get rich scams, because that's exactly what they are.
Right, and I think that's a perfect way when we talk about Bitcoin. And as everyone knows, I'm a proponent of Bitcoin. It is a transparent, decentralized coin system that promotes transparency. You know where each transaction is taking place. It's verified. It's verified by independent computers all around the world. And that's why we're seeing so many countries adopt it as currency. And that's why we're seeing major corporations moving into it. It's something that cannot be, it's uneffable with, if you know what I'm saying.
Non-fungible.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the other word, but yeah, fungible too. Exactly. Donna Staton, one of our subscribers, said, "Good morning, guys. I think we're in the middle of March Madness." Boy, I think you're right, Donna. I think it's just getting started. I think we are going to be seeing some significant moves this month. And, here's another thing, you guys. Let's talk a little bit, Alex, about President Trump talking about April 2nd. He keeps bringing it up. April 2nd, April 2nd, April 2nd. And he's calling it, he calling it Independence Day or Freedom Day, or I can't remember the term that he uses, but I find it very interesting that he has brought that up over and over and over again. What do you make of it, Alex?
I don't think he does anything without a specific purpose. And isn't that the day that the tariffs start to kick in?
Right. Oh, Liberation Day. That's what he calls it.
Right.
Thank you for putting that in there, Terry.
that's when we start again with transparency, understanding the volume that these tariffs are going to generate and create. New announcement. Guess who's bringing billions of dollars of revenue and manufacturing to the States? NVIDIA.
Yeah.
Folks, pay attention. The tariffs are doing exactly what they're supposed to, which is bringing business back into our four walls so that every single thing that we're purchasing and buying doesn't have a made in somewhere else sticker anymore, right? No more made in Mexico, no more made in China, made in the good old US of A.
As it should be, America first. Absolutely.
100%.
Hey, Tam at the Ranch is here. Good morning, Tam. Glad you could make it. Tina, good morning. Cece said, did he say Jubilee also? I don't remember him saying Jubilee, but I think there's a lot of ideas surrounding that in terms of debt forgiveness, in terms of where we're headed as an economy in America. I mean, we're already talking about no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, no tax if you're making $150,000 a year or less, which I believe is all leading up to ultimately no more federal income tax. And I think that's the direction that we're going. Hey, everybody on TikTok, double tap that screen, share this live out if you would. It's appreciated. And if you want to contribute to our daily goal of Tiny Dinies, that would be wonderful. And again, we do have subscriptions available on TikTok. Would love to have you be part of our inner circle. Alex and I have some really interesting things planned when we hit the 100 subscribers. I think you're going to want to be part of it. At least we'd like you to be part of it. Joey and Patsy, Stelly, good morning. Glad you could make it. Deanna, thank you for the heart meets. That's really sweet of you. Our Jeff Code says some Tiny Dinies. Thanks so much. Hey, Sarge is here. Good morning, Sarge. Glad you can make it. So I think we are looking at the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, starting to flex her muscles a little bit. She's calling the attacks on the Tesla facilities domestic terrorism. And if you guys go back and you look at the National Defense Authorization Act, if you are deemed a terrorist, there are a whole series of events that take place that basically remove any protections that you have. So for her to claim these are domestic terrorists, that opens up a whole nother realm of prosecutorial avenues that the AG or even at the state level can take. And I just find it interesting that she specifically called them, quote, domestic terrorists. So I just think that's really interesting. Hey, Traveler just became a subscriber. Thank you, Traveler. I'm glad you made it. Deanna sent a bunch of finger me's. Thank you, Deanna. So again, I think we're moving, as we have said, March Madness is taking place. We have tectonic shifts taking place. Hey, Sydney's here. All right, hold on, Sydney. Let me see if I can bring you on here.
I got it.
You got it?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Dark Horse.
Oh, I think we got Sydney. Sydney, is that you or? Oh, that's Dark Horse. Oh, shoot. Sorry, Adam. Hold on.
Adam, we're going to drop you down, buddy. I don't see Sydney's request yet.
I got him. Okay. At least I think I got him. Yep, there he is. Are you there, Sydney?
What's going on, gentlemen?
Well, welcome to the Daily Dispatch live broadcast. I'm glad you could make it.
Hey, I'm glad for the invite. How's it going over there? I've been listening to you guys for the last about 10, 15 minutes here, just catching up.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I didn't see you in the chat till just now.
No, it's okay. It's all good, brother.
So, all right. So let's bring, as I've stated, we have a special guest, Sydney Brewer. Now, Sydney, are you in Canada?
I am, yeah. I'm currently in Ontario.
Okay. So I went back and I looked for the video that I initially found from you. And then when I reached out to you, we had some interaction and apparently you went on vacation. I'm glad you're back. But that first video that I saw, I wasn't able to recap it again. So I'm going to give kind of a broad stroke of what I think we're going to talk about today. And if I'm incorrect, just correct me as we go forward. But you had talked about real property or personal property in Canada that may not necessarily be owned by the Crown anymore. And would you kind of expound upon what you were talking about there?
So it comes down to a bunch of different things. It depends on the perspective that people are coming from. Realistically speaking, with my ranking system going through private central banking, secret societies, intelligence communities, stuff like that, we were given the fundamental information about how the world actually works from a private central banking perspective, coming down all the way from, the Rothschild family, all the way down through the 3 city-states, all the way down into Canada, the United States, and where everybody was going and what the actual plan was for this takeover of all the programs. And what we learned through our training, I was Canadian born and raised, only to find out that we can't actually own anything here because it's part of a Crown trust. And then we started digging in a little bit more, and we were trying to figure out, how is this even possible? And then that led down a lot of rabbit holes with the sovereignty and freedom groups, and trying to figure out the actual truth behind a lot of those agendas. Realistically speaking, this whole project that we have here, we tried to move property in Canada with equitable and allodial titles only for the Governor General and registries, Lieutenant Governor General, and the Bank of Canada to refuse the allodial title because all mineral rights in the Commonwealth belong to the Crown. So then we tracked the financial records and went back and found out that the Bank of Canada does all of its transactions with the Bank of England. The Bank of England settles its transactions through the Bank of International Settlements with the United States of America. So we were like, well, how do you actually get ownership of property if you're only getting the equitable title and not the allodial title? Which actually led us back again one more time to the sovereignty communities, where we found out that it was a UCC3 chattel property. If you file that, if you're running a common law trust, which is the exact equivalent of the Crown Trust, you can file a UCC3, move that property title into the trust, and then take that UCC1 and UCC3, the UCC1 financing and the UCC3 chattel property to the Lieutenant Governor General or to the Bank of Canada, and they will transfer the allodial title from the Crown, because it's a private trust, back to your private trust.
Wow. So, but wouldn't UCC be more of a United States function as opposed to an international function?
It is. So the international systems, all of the Commonwealth runs on what's called a PPSA and a PPRS. PPSA is a personal property security agreement, and PPRS is a personal property registry verification. So you have your UCC1 in the US, and a PPRS verification statement is the exact equivalent in Canada.
Oh, okay. I get it. All right. So when you had spoken in that last video about these properties, it seemed to me that you were possibly suggesting that the United States may have more control there already than what we're led to believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. So it works like this. If the world reserve currency is the United States dollar, which it is, it doesn't really matter about anything else. So the public opinion on sovereignty of Canada or England or Australia, New Zealand, anybody in the Commonwealth, the illusion is of the sovereignty of those nations. It actually does not apply. As long as the mineral rights is owned by the Crown, then all allodial titles, which is the thing you need, and there's only sovereign nations can issue allodial titles. So they split that up between the United States, London, and the Vatican. There are the only 3 places you can obtain those.
Oh, so we're going back to the triad of control.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything went back to the Rothschilds. And again, when you guys were just talking about the whole cryptocurrency and the switch over in the system there, that's exactly what this is all about. The United States being the world reserve currency, we found out the fiat system of the United States built on fiat is actually illegal. It's not backed by anything.
Right.
So that initiated the whole changeover between Bitcoin, Ethereum, XLM, XRP being on the Ripple network. And when Ripple Network is doing that, private central bankers are taking up that side of it. And then the national sides will be the Bitcoin and Ethereum. So they will run that national perspective. International asset-backed securities, which is what we deal with, are going to be on the Ripple Network because they're already an asset-backed trust company.
Interesting. Alex, input?
He's exactly right. And that starts the shift, as we've talked about before, where transactions happening on the blockchain. If I'm going to purchase a piece of property, the title, the exchange, everything goes on to the blockchain. It's interesting times.
So, Sydney, how do you see what we just discussed, the real world impact of what we're seeing take place?
So what you're seeing right now is, again, with the United States of America, especially where you guys are, agreements were already made about 5 to 6 years ago to finalize the last bit of contracts. When I talked about like that video with Canada Probate and all that kind of stuff with Mark Carney, it was actually, the whole thing was there and designed. People are not really putting the pieces together between, Parliament being prorated, Justin Trudeau stepping down, Mark Carney coming in as a private banker. And I said, if, anybody that was dealing with asset management, which all citizens are bonded out to their private central banks, that's how we actually make money. So on my side of it, I have sovereign bonds that are issued out to the Bank of Canada. They do a loan at interest at 2.5% for 365 days back to us. But the only guarantee we get of getting our money back to the bank from the Bank of Canada is an agreement that the governing nation, so basically the Crown Corporation of Canada, taxes its citizens, and that's how private central bank and fractional reserve banking works. So the citizens are responsible for repaying the debt back to us. Now that millions of people have went through the awakening and they're starting to correct their status from debtor to creditor, all of these bonds are being called in, which is collapsing the fiat system. So all of our trust companies, which are asset-backed, because we've collateralized properly like the private central bankers did, we are now all moving our irrevocable trust accounts over to the Ripple network. So we're asset-backed legally and lawfully on the public and private side, and we're switching our currency over to the blockchain, which then collapses the fiat system. Interesting. So when President Trump's talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, do you think that what we're discussing here may be a precursor to what he has been trolling or speaking about in terms of the 51st state? 100%. It's only public perspective. It's basically people that have no idea how geopolitical landscapes or how backdoor agreements, for lack of a better term, actually work. When you look at the map as a whole, the actual globalist agenda, we know about the 2030 stakeholder and we know about the 2030 shareholder agenda, two different programs running at the same time. In an agreement that was made, you just have to look back at history in order to predict the future. And historical events like World War II, the rise of Hitler's whole campaign was designed around actually collapsing the private central banking system in Frankfurt, Germany with the Rothschilds. It was never an attack supposedly on the Jews. It was an attack on the private central banking system to collapse it from that product. And if you look to what we're going through right now, the campaign verbatim between Trump and this system is the exact same campaign between Hitler and Germany coming from Austria. So we're seeing history just repeat itself. Now, in this perspective, the United States holds the one key that Germany never had at the time, or Austria never had, is that the United States is actually holding the world reserve currency, which is giving them the actual tool they needed in order to make this agenda go forward. So North America must become one, and they will move Europe into one. If you guys are paying attention to the geopolitical landscape, you see Africa has basically just united under one umbrella, so they're moving in the same campaign. We'll see the same thing with, all 7 continents are going to go under, and they're calling it the 7 Initiative.
Well, it's funny that you say that when you brought up the parallels with Hitler. I've read Mein Kampf. It was years ago. And the two things that he was most concerned about were the control of Germany by the bankers and the media. And that's exactly what President Trump has been screaming about for years now. So what you're saying is that we have some real world concrete evidence that we're moving into this new system, this new geopolitical landscape at a much more rapid rate than most people seem to think. Is that correct?
100%. And I mean, you can no longer make Germany the target. So for World War I, World War II, Germany was the target because they owned their own private central bank. And if people like look back at history, I mean, you had Adolf Hitler on the cover of Time magazine, I think it was 1936 or 1938, as Man of the Year in full Nazi regalia, because the Nazi Party and Germany, the Frankfurt or German Jews of Frankfurt, Germany, the Rothschilds, they own the Federal Reserve as well as all of the currency that is printed into the United States, and that's why they weren't able to enter the war until Japan invaded or attacked, right?
Right.
So there's all of these deals are all done behind the scene and they're already made. So if the public is hearing about it right now, I can guarantee you that those contracts were signed about 10 years ago.
Right. I would agree. And most people don't realize that essentially Trump merged the Federal Reserve and the Department of Treasury back. Well, we found out about it back in March of 2020. So I think you're right that we are witnessing something that took place some time ago, and it's just being rolled out optically now to the public. Would you agree with that?
100%. And again, we know this to be true because we deal with this basically on a daily basis. Most of our people are already over there, but it's not a matter of picking sides at this point. It's a matter of you change the perspective on how we're looking at the equation. If you look at it from a perspective of every leader that's on the board right now has a group of people that are with them, that resonate with them, that are following through the process, but we're all pointing everyone in the exact same perspective. So everybody's going to end up in the same place. It's just a matter of how you get there.
Right. So, well, I find it very interesting that, as you said just a moment ago, so many of these agreements took place years ago, and that optical rollout. One of the things that I've always said is that you can't just drop a frog into a pot of boiling water. They're either going to jump out or they're going to die. And I think that's what we're seeing play out in real time now, is the temperature slowly being risen to awaken the populations, not just of America, but around the world. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why you saw Russia as being the target. The psyop and the propaganda is that the United States and Russia are always head to head. But if you look back at actual factual history, Russia and the United States, even from the War of Independence, were actually partnered up in order to fight the British, the English, and First Nations. Again, the crown that moved them back so that the United States could maintain its sovereignty. And now, during World War I, World War II, we saw the German Jews, like the private central bank of Germany, because of its rise, was threatened by Winston Churchill. So they wanted the destruction of Germany to bring Germany into the fold so that they could control it with the English pound. But then the reserve currency switched over to the United States, which protected some of those systems. Now, Russia being the next big superpower on the block, comparison to the United States of America, they own their own private central bank. So that's why they're now the big scope on the block and why NATO is trying to take control. And again, for anybody that actually knows, Russia actually tried to join NATO, but NATO refused. And NATO only exists because of the Cold War with the tensions with Russia. So if there's no tension and they tried to join NATO, why does NATO even exist?
Right. And, it's really interesting, too, because if you remember 6, 7, 8 years ago, I don't remember the exact time, but Russia essentially was pushed out of the SWIFT system, and that forced them to make changes that I think we're seeing playing out today. Would you agree with that?
100%. And again, NATO was never, they signed many treaties. They were never supposed to expand any further east, but they've been incorporating countries hand over fist. And the one that if I were the general public, the one that should have caught everyone's eye was Switzerland. We all know what's going on with Switzerland, Large Hadron Collider, tied to the Vatican, tied to, the deep state ops itself. So the incorporation of Switzerland in there with a bunch of different systems, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than what people can even put together and fathom. And the illusion is to keep you guys separated and fighting, Canada versus the United States and all this sort of stuff. It's just a big psyop, and everybody's buying into it because they believe in their version of sovereignty, which actually doesn't exist.
Right. And I would tend to look back at when NAFTA was done away with and the USMCA was brought into existence. My guess is that some of the things that we're talking about were kind of intertwined in that agreement. Do you have any information on that?
Not necessarily. Can you repeat the question though?
Yeah.
I think it was USMCA.
So
when we got rid of NAFTA.
Yeah, when we got rid of NAFTA, President Trump instituted the USMCA, and it's been my contention that there were agreements made with Canada and Mexico during that time that we haven't seen optically roll out yet. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and again, so there was the last foothold. The agreements were already made. So I'll give an example. Just from my own program and when we move people over into our trust systems, like this whole movement that has happened, all of those trusts are registered with the Secretary of State in the United States of America. And the thing that you have to look at on all the filings is even if the address is in Canada, it still shows as the country being the United States of America. And that's the part that tipped us all off that we were already part of the United States.
Wow. Okay. So when you say that you're already part of the United States, are we going to expect some sort of an optical revealing of what we're discussing here? And if so, how do you see that playing out?
You have to see it this way. So basically, like your election process, again, we know that democracy technically isn't actually legitimate for the simple fact that the popular vote never wins every election because you guys have an electoral college, which means that the system is already designed another way for them to be able to get the person in power they need, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with this process here, with what we're going through right now. You will see what they're looking for is the public opinion. And if they can sway the public opinion enough, they don't have to force any more economic ties or military conflict because the public will have already made the decision that supports their decision to either annex or just incorporate over.
Right, which is just another psyop on top of another psyop, right?
That's right. Just another layer on top of another layer.
Right, exactly.
Chasing my tail that's not really my tail that was supposed to be my tail when it was my tail.
Yeah, exactly. So, boy, well, you sure have confirmed quite a bit, Sydney. I most everything that we've been talking about on this show for some time now revolves around this perception of the United States annexing or incorporating Canada. Well, it sounds to me, based on what you're telling me, that it's already happened and that the triad of the Vatican, London, and Washington, D.C. has been dispensed with. And I might add, too, that when the inauguration invitations went out, it was no longer referred to as Washington, D.C. It was referred to as the city of Washington. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you guys already have the collapse of the deep state. The moment that the inauguration happened for public opinion, that deep state version of Washington, D.C. Was literally liquidated as a city state. And again, they are moving it and changing it over. Like if you look at the date that it happened, all the houses that were owned by deep state members or public or political officials all went for sale the next day. So it's because they're no longer protected by that deep state or city state objective of Washington, D.C. And you're going to see that renamed here very quickly. And same thing with this whole campaign, this rebranding campaign that Trump is on. It's not just a rebranding, it's the initiation of this new golden age agenda and moving people forward where they need to be. And the public is not going to see this coming. So somewhere between now and, you know how Trump likes his pomp and circumstance. So again, start looking to the 4th of July for a big awakening project or the big rug pull that he might pull inside the system, asset-backed securities. A lot of the market has to collapse. So the people are like, oh, the stock market is collapsing, everything is coming down. But yeah, it has to because it's tied to the old system. So we have to get rid of that program before you can enter into Web3, blockchain, everybody's equal and part and parcel, and you're running your own network. Again, we're trying to remove the intermediaries and the need for an exchange process where intermediaries are getting the citizens to pay the tax to pay back the loan at interest to a deep state system.
Right.
And what Sydney's talking about is the highest form of law in court is the court of equity, right? And so when you bring everyone to an equity status, You are no longer in a higher court, lower court. It is all about equity. So if there's an injured party, then equity comes into play. It's about my assets and equity. When we move into an equity system, there's an equality that happens, and the facilitator of that is transparency of blockchain and doing contracts where you can track from beginning to end where things come from, where they go. This movement's not new. I mean, if you go back 15, 20 years, there's a term which is really an oxymoron, which the sovereign citizen, which if you look up the definition of those two words is an oxymoron. But the reality is when we step into our sovereignty and we step into our living being, creating our trusts and working in the courts of equity, it balances a whole lot of things that have been thrown completely out of balance in the power structure of centralized banking and governments, which are not really governments, they're corporations, and all the way down to the county assessors coming in and moving our property from a allodial title into their system so that they can tax us and take away our property because it's no longer our property. When you put tags on your car, you're giving the state permission to own that car and you're simply leasing it from them. It gets really convoluted and complicated until you understand equity and the trust process, setting up your trusts, separating yourself from the system, separating your assets from the system, because in truth, what they want is for us to own nothing at the end of the day. And in reality, that's actually the best way to go. I don't own anything. My trust owns it all, and I'm the executor of that trust.
Right. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't this also incorporate the whole straw man theory, Sydney?
Correct. 100%.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why you see the copyright registered trademark next to my name on the profile. And again, we're all registered with the Secretary of State at International Filing Centers. When, again, if the public is attacking something, like if a lawyer, a CPA, or bankers, they're attacking a specific program, it's because they're protecting that actual program itself, because they're party to the crime, right? When we move through this process, I mean, I pointed this out to so many bankers in the system. I'm like, all I want you to do is tell me, where does the money come from the private central bankers? If you can explain to me how sovereign bonds, tier one assets work on the international market, I will sit down and listen. If you cannot explain that side to me, you're a part of the problem, not part of the actual solution. So, and they couldn't, and we do this for a living. So when you look at my bond registered with Secretary of State in Colorado, it literally goes out to the Governor General, Triff Macklem, the Governor General of the Bank of Canada. And that's how it works. And then there's a responsibility for him to reclaim that bond back to us at that 2.5% interest over 365 days. And when we found that out, there's only one way you can make that happen, and that was correcting your status from the debtor de facto corporate fiction profile over to the de jure living man, which means that you're a creditor in the system loaning money to the state, and then they're responsible for getting that money back. And through the Jekyll Island Agreement, they agreed to hold the taxpayers responsible, which is why all the citizens are indebted, again, going back to Saskatchewan Act 1666.
Right. So based on what we've been discussing here, first of all, when do you see the optical rollout of this major change taking place, number one? And number two, can you present some form or idea of how it may present itself? I mean, we know President Trump, is talking about April 2nd. He's talking about the golden age. He's talking about these different things. How do you think that might play out in the real world in real time?
So the agenda here is, again, Trump is going to get whatever Trump wants because it's part of the script.
Right.
He's dialed into, it's controlled opposition. The golden boy, he must come forward, and they're playing out the whole Revelations campaign right on public profile for everybody to be able to see, but he's also supposed to be declared as the peacemaker. Again, I don't agree with 100% of the tactics being used on the general public, but I do know where he's going with the agenda. So therefore, I have to sit back and just swallow my pride a little bit as he moves forward, because it's like, yeah, okay, I get why you're doing it. The public will never catch on. They're not going to understand what you're doing. So basically, you got to bring down that, you know, that fist and that hammer and just school them like little kids and say, hey, sit in the corner while we straighten out your bullshit.
Right. I
But
think
on the flip side of that, Sydney, I see as there's two sides to that, right? And as things have played out, I think there's also an educating of the public. Like here is the process. You didn't understand, you know, 5 years ago that this is the way things move through the system. And I think we're as a nation, as a world, we're learning how things move through the system. Undoubtedly, 80% of this country can't name the three branches of government, right? Like taking us back to the Constitution and understanding the processes that are built into the Constitution so that we don't end up here again for at least another 250 years. So while I 100% agree with you, I don't agree with all of the way that things are unfolding, but I understand the destination that we're headed to. But I also think on the other side of that, there is an education happening. There is a curiosity being awakened inside of people going, wait a minute. So you mean this is the way this is supposed to work? I didn't know that. Judges right now, what we're seeing with the judges stepping in and saying, oh, you can't do that, Mr. President. We're learning that, no, absolutely he can do that. And we're learning that the judges are overstepping where they're supposed to be. And again, if we get back to courts of equity, most of the judicial system that's built in the United States today is going to be completely restructured.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, wouldn't that be the difference between maritime law and common law?
Yeah,
equity law is even above maritime law.
It is. And maritime law, maritime and admiralty is basically the version of the crown, which goes back to the occult art of law, which goes back to, canon law's crown, the way everything was done with usury with the Knights Templar back in the day, which was the first version of maritime law. And that's where it all stems from. So we moved out of and we moved through that, and it was designed to be a protective program issued by the church. But the problem is the public was told that Christianity and paganism were actually forms of religion, but the deep state actually took those two forms of religion and turned it into a commercial transaction. So now we rely on the King James Version and the Revised Version of the Bible in order to support our commerce transactions. I mean, one of the early versions I have the 1903 edition of the Bible from the Library of Congress in the United States, and I'm in Canada, so we rely on that information in order to conduct business on the international level. And people don't understand it in this process with the trust and that sovereignty side of it. If you look at the PPRS statement in Canada, it's all based around biblical scripture. And when people say, hey, it's part of the script, that's what they're talking about. The scripture, that book itself that's widely recognized, is the book, the script that everybody is following in order to move like prophetic systems around and move these agendas forward. So again, if everybody understood that the book was the script that we're all using, then they would have the answers to all of the solutions and see and have the foresight to where we're all going.
Well,
and if you need receipts for that, just ask yourself the critical question: why is the Vatican a country of its own? And where is the majority of the gold and the wealth in the three systems, London, Vatican, and the United States? You really start to question this system that has been architected over hundreds of years, and it's a system of control, folks.
Well, and it's my contention that system of control has already been broken, and I think it was done through the executive orders that President Trump enacted in 17, 18, and 19, specifically 13818 and 13848, talking about human trafficking and election interference and the seizing of assets. Would you agree with that, Sydney?
Yeah, I would 100%. And again, there's a lot more to that story. I mean, I come from that background. I was one of those kids that was human trafficked, brought through the whole entire campaign, brought through the secret societies. I escaped the entire program. And again, so I'm bringing experience to the table, not just the PSYOP campaign, you know what I mean? when we talk about these things, I was one of those children. So it's when you're moving into that what Trump is doing is paving the way for that transition to be able to happen. So I'll give you a little fun fact about the world economic value that people don't know. Every year, coming up this summer, actually, you'll see this play out, and Trump will be part of this. I think they're going into July or early August. Every year, the Bank of England auctions off all of the Commonwealth gold to any nation that wants to buy it. So if you're a sovereign nation or you have an account of 10 billion plus, you can get a paddle to go in and buy auction gold from the Commonwealth. So all Commonwealth nations, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Ireland, Scotland, so on and so forth, the 80 Commonwealth nations, they will actually take all of their mined gold reserves, gold, silver, precious metals, and it gets allocated back to the Bank of England. They get a tally on it there, and then they do an auction. And the reason they do that is they sell the gold for pennies on the dollar because it keeps the gold value low so that sovereign nations can buy it and asset-back their securities for the future. And that's what BRICS nations were doing for the last 10 years. They were going to the Bank of England, they were buying up all of this gold, just a steady flow, and they were able to asset back all of the securities. That's what BRICS was able to come in at such a comparable dollar for dollar value with the United States dollar currency. So what you could possibly see roll out is the world reserve currency leaving the United States and then switching completely onto the digital Ripple chain for asset-backed securities altogether, along with the securities of BTC and ETH to support the national system.
And so what he just explained, honestly, for everybody, I mean, we've got 270 people in here. Follow everybody, please, on the panel, share it out. But what he just explained is exactly why our federal government only values the gold at Fort Knox at $42 a troy ounce, right? Now you understand, folks. We've been talking about this for weeks, and now you understand why it's valued at that. And a revaluation of gold, moving it to a Ripple type scenario, so we're not just on fiat currency anymore. We're on an asset backed that we can transfer instantly, right? Cross-border payment system.
100%. And the Ripple network also needs us. So like there's two agendas, public and private, working simultaneously together. So you look at Trump's perspective as the asset manager for the entire public. And then you look at our side of it, the groups that have moved on to the freedom, the sovereign community, set up the irrevocable trust operating on the Ripple chain. We're the private bankers that are backing the Ripple network. So everybody's working together to do the exact same thing. When Trump holds the power as the executive over all of the citizens under his control, whether that's the United States and or Canada, depending on how quickly we move here, he already has total control of the allodial titles on the citizens, which gives them the jurisdiction and the right to use those titles, the asset-backed security of the bonds internationally, in order to support his campaign moving the currencies around.
The bonds created at birth certificate.
Yeah, so yeah, we do, it's record of live birth converted to the root document, which is a birth certificate. The birth certificate then gets registered in the state or province where the debtor is issued. That all caps estate is then created. And we figured a lot of this out too with CRA, with the Canada Revenue Service. When we switched over, we do the all caps estate in Canada, and then they switched the TAN number, which is the Canadian equivalent to the EIN. So they took that EIN or TAN number and just transferred it over. We're like, where is this estate? How did you guys have a trust account number for us? And they're like, yeah, so that was just done for you to be able to pay taxes. That's the only answer they will give you. And I'm like, well, where did it come from? And they're like, it always existed. So we went to a couple of friends of mine had parents die, and they were getting executor letters from the Canada Revenue Service that showed the all caps estate in their full name and estate with this TAN number. And then they were asking me, like, where is this the actual thing? Is there actually an estate? And we're like, well, there's proof in the pudding right there. They just transferred a document of an executor title from the estate that nobody knew existed.
So as we move forward, Sydney, in your opinion, and of course, nobody's going to hold you to this, but actually, before we even get to that, Sydney, I want everybody on TikTok to be able to follow you. Will you give them your username on TikTok so they can follow you?
So the username on TikTok is exactly as it is on the screen. It's at Sydney M. Brewer, and it's the same on my other media as well.
Okay. Everybody go over and give Sydney a follow. I mean, this is a wealth of information. When I saw his video, I was so impressed, and I'm so grateful, Sydney, that you decided to come on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So as we move forward and this shift is taking place, do you think that there was any or how much validity would you put on the plane loads of gold that were supposedly lifted from the Vatican? Do you think that was part of this switch process?
Yeah, so a lot of it did get moved. And again, there's only 3 actual depositories on the planet. One sitting with Washington, which Trump has already previously moved, which now went out to Fort Knox. This whole campaign that you're seeing right now, the Bank of England being the other one and the Vatican being the other one. When it comes down to it, the connection with the Vatican and the World Economic Forum is going to be Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab was listed as Universal Bishop, and being the fact that he was a Jew or a German Jew, and I'm not trying to sound ignorant or rude in here, but you can't call a Jew a Catholic. So to hide the campaign of the World Economic Forum taking over the bonds with the Vatican, they called Klaus Schwab a Universal Bishop, which literally the word universal actually translates to Catholic.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So that's what's going on in the world. And again, that's the 2030 shareholder and 2030 stakeholder agenda. That's the globalist elite. So both versions are coming up at the exact same time. One version is Trump's world of sovereignty, blockchain, Web3 systems. Everybody's operating the golden age. And the other one is the deep state hold of the final 2 pieces on the board ran by United Nations, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization. And everybody should have been on par. The moment Trump started pulling away from the WHO, the WEF, the United Nations, and NATO, that should have been the key that everybody saw in the system. We're like, okay, so this boy knows what's up. He's on the go.
Yeah, exactly.
So with over 300 viewers in here, Sydney, if it, obviously us as panel members are in the know, but if you could make a recommendation or point some of the people that want more information, or they're like, oh my God, this is insane. Like, where do I even start? What do you recommend that they read or watch, or a place that they can go to start to get their feet wet and understand what we're talking about?
So there are some good sites out there. I mean, realistically speaking, for anybody that wants information, there's a series out there called Redemption Series 6, which is actually what the way that program was built on through Make Freedom or Sovereign Falling Solutions. They have it on their site as well. And the Redemption Series 6 works part and parcel with the Canadian Securities and Canadian Trust and Estate Administration program, which in my program, we run both of those educational systems together. So we show the connections in the entire world of how all asset securities move around in all processes, not just in one country.
So from an optical standpoint, Sydney, when it comes to Canada and the United States of America, do you see it being the 51st state? Do you see it being just a behind the scenes agreement on commerce? How do you see that playing out?
Well, it already is. So if you look at it from this perspective, if you have 100,000 secured party creditors, I'm just throwing out just a random number. If you have 100,000 secured party creditors in Canada alone, and all of those creditors decided that they were moving into this trust, which pulls the tax and the burden and all the bonds away from the state, which it did, which is why you're seeing happen now, all of those land title agreements moved into a security agreement using the United States reserve currency, which is the US dollar. And now we have all of these pieces already done, which means that we've already moved allocated pieces of land out of Canada into the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, at any time, we did this in preparation for people to see the release of Article 9 and Article 11. And then people go back and actually read that with the United States, they will realize Canada was always part of the United States. We never weren't a part of it. You know what I mean? So we're going back to, everybody everybody wants to like, oh, you can't go back to 17 and 16 and this, but you have to go back to the root causes of all of these things in order to sort out the mess that was created after the fact.
Well, and wouldn't that have something to do with the Act of 1871 as well?
Yeah, Act of 1871, again, for the Commonwealth, it would have been London, which would have been the Chesapeake Bay Act 1666, which was the original version of Maritime Admiralty law when everybody got moved in as de facto corporate fictions and bonded from there. And during the expansion process coming across, then obviously we know about the conflict then between the British and the Americans and that War of Independence, and then that tapered over into different versions and structures. Everybody started switching their laws, constitutional, private, maritime admiralty, down to military, and then up into semi-private, which is called constitutional, and then above constitutional you have common law, and then natural law, and then God's law above it. So there's so many different legal and lawful structures that taper on top of each other. It depends on what narrative we're going with, which jurisdiction we're in. Private international law is built on the Dutch systems, which are going back to canon laws. If you follow money financially around the world, we use private international law. If you follow currency of the realm being Canadian dollars, then nobody that's outside of Canada, all Canadians are going to view their dollar as being the biggest thing on the market because they can't see past the illusion, not realizing. And then you ask them, well, who owns the world reserve currency? They're like, oh, that's the United States dollar. So I'm like, what makes you think then for 1 second that the Canadian dollar has any value?
Well, what makes us think that the American dollar has any value?
Exactly. So that's where we're going. And when Trump moved everything around, like the illusion has already been passed, and HJR 192, June 5th, 1933, declared remedy and recourse. So we were able to see past the illusion and correct the status of individuals. The United States Constitution supports it with that program. And that's what Trump has enacted, was that exact HJR 192. So he's bringing all of that forward and moving everything back to asset-backed securities. We know we can't issue out gold coins to all the citizens on the planet. So the next best thing you can do is move it to an asset-backed securities program, which would be the Ripple Network, a trust company backed by other trust companies that have collateralized assets in them from the sovereign community.
So,
which is transparent, which is non-fungible, which is followable from point A to point B.
That's right, 100%. Yeah.
So I'm assuming that part of that would be part of the sovereign wealth fund that President Trump's been talking about here. And if we do go down that route and the sovereign wealth fund is created and funded, if Canada became part of the United States, do you think it would be the 51st state, or would it be just an agreement, optically?
So it would probably just be more optical than anything else. They would just basically wipe the border out. Not much would change except the currency. And people are under the illusion that, it would all change. And I say to people that say, the United States of America, and they're talking about this, I want to say, look at your own state. So if you're from the United States of America, each independent state is self-governing. So everyone has their own governor, like Michigan, Texas, Florida. All of these independent states, when it comes down to the Constitution, are all independently ran. So what would be the difference of Canada being independently ran, even though it is part of the United States? It would still be just an independent ran state.
So it wouldn't necessarily be a sovereign nation. It would be a sovereign state.
That's right. It would just be a state of the same as it is laid out right now. You will see when you look at geopolitical landscapes, this all goes back to the Northwest Passage. Whoever controls commerce in the Northwest Passage controls all of commerce for the next couple of 100 years. Right now, we know Russia is on one side of it, coming into Alaska, already held by the United States. And then for some odd reason, we have 3 territories that are not provinces above that. So we have Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut, which are all listed as just territories, which are the key component pieces needed in order to navigate the Northwest Passage. And by law, all territories are up for grabs because they haven't been claimed by a state or a sovereign nation. So that gives them the jurisdiction to come up there and basically lock that in. And that's why you're seeing so much military movement now with Mark Carney and the United States and Russia and China, and everybody's going to the Arctic because they want to control that Northwest Passage. And that's what this entire whole global warming agenda was all about.
Right. And what about Greenland? Do you see that as part of this puzzle piece?
Yeah, it's that agreement has actually already been done. The public is seeing it play out because they need, again, you need the support of the public in order not to arouse too much conflict internationally. So if the public supports the transaction from one to another, it will automatically go through much easier and much quicker. So what they're doing is just a beta test on every nation. They're testing the waters to see, hey, would the public support this? Yes, the public does support it. Okay, good. We can make this transaction happen really quickly. If the public doesn't support it, then there's a lot of backlash. Okay, now we got to reevaluate how do we do this economically where we don't actually have to fire any bullets.
So from a Canadian perspective, what is the overall flavor of this proposed union of the United States and Canada? Are people for it? Are they against it? What are you seeing over there?
It's about a 50-50. And I mean, from an international banking perspective, from like my perspective, operating internationally, again, they're moving the superpowers out. So all of the chokehold that China has had on Canada and the United States with manufacturing and capabilities and ownership that they bought up. Like if we look at the map, I mean, China owned almost all the farmland around all military installations in the United States of America and in Canada. So that was a very strategic play that was made by their system. Now, what happened here was Trump was smart enough to be able to make this work. He will then initiate Mexico into becoming the next manufacturing capital of the world, along with the United States acting as the currency and Canada supporting with the resources. That gives you the holy trifecta.
Man, there's a lot to digest here, Sydney. My goodness. I mean, and I think I'm pretty well versed in this, but there's a lot to digest here. What were you going to say, Alex?
My guess is Sydney's probably been at this for about 15, 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and again, I have some, I'm not going to call it insider information, but at the same time, I work with communities, groups, and organizations at the highest level that organize these things that are structured. And you have to see it from that perspective. There were gatekeeping organizations, these societies, these deep state organizations like Masons, Illuminati, all the things that you've heard about conspiracies about. It's actually legitimate. If you've ever heard about it being some form of reality, it's actually truth. So all of these things do exist and they are controlled by certain sectors of the system. Once you go through those training programs, like everything else, they ask you, it's all a script. What character would you like to play? What side do you want to fall out of this on? And you really have to sit back and reevaluate your life at that point because you're like, yeah, I'm not really sure if I even want to participate in this reality anymore.
Exactly.
Blue pill. It's called the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what do you think, as we wind this up, Sydney, what do you think most people watching this show, both live now and the ones that will watch it on recording, what should we be on the lookout for over the next week, month, 6 months?
So here's the strategic play of the system. And I know because on the freedoms groups, the sovereignty side of things with international backed securities, that's the market I'm in. So we see how this is going to work. What I've watched for was Mark Carney go to France, England, and then to First Nations, which is an exact repeat of the War of Independence between the United States of America and the British Empire. So with that first being your first day in office, that was the first transactions that were made. It tells you that we're getting ready to repeat a war or a conflict of independence, whether that's economic in value or if it's going to be physically combative in value. Everyone wants a peaceful transition. Nobody wants war and conflict between two states. But my perspective is the truth, legally and lawfully, needs to be released to the people to explain to them, hey, you guys actually do have a free will choice. You don't have to be on one side or the other. You are going to see this play out. So they know the public will never move in that agenda. So what you'll see play out now is a total dominant control of the market. You're going to see a lot of blowback from people on all sides against Trump with his narrative. But again, he's been handpicked and selected for this process for that reason, because he can handle it. It doesn't bother him at all. He's got pretty thick skin.
Right.
So, it's not going to get to him. What you will see now is a collapse of the actual self-equity or the asset-backed market, securities market, until our side, the trust process, backs the Ripple network, where we just convert the assets over on the international market. You will see US dollar convert over there. With the market collapsing, everybody will say that, we're into an economic recession. They'll claim all of these things are happening, but conveniently out of nowhere, overnight, you will see the entire Ripple network come on to back private equity, and then you will see the entire rise of crypto with the US. And if our judgment is correct at this point, it means that the United States world reserve currency, being the timeline, is up as a USD being the world reserve currency, just like it was for the English pound way back when. So it always switches between nations around the world. So who's the next big player that would hold the world reserve currency? Well, that would probably be the BRICS systems, because they are asset backed. And then you will see North America switching completely into Trump will lead the way of the golden age, which is the Ripple, the blockchain, the Web3 systems. And you'll see those two empires come up together simultaneously.
And do you see that happening in the very near future, or is there any way to predict it at this point?
Absolutely. So again, everything happens this year.
Wow.
Everything.
Wow. Well, with that being said, when you talk about the stock market, the shift, or the switch, as I call it, do you think we're looking at a adjustment in the stock market in the short term? Are we looking at a collapse? What are you thinking?
You'll see a total and utter collapse. And again, so the private bankers will have to go. They will try to put the pressure on the U.S. government, so Congress. So Congress holds the purse for the United States, right? So what happens is private bankers, during that Jekyll Island agreement, like we talked about, they hold the citizens responsible with taxes in order to repay the debts. But in this case, Trump is actually going to force a refusal and not release any currency to back the private central bankers or bail them out, because they just absorbed all that money anyway. And if you know anything about private central banking, all of those assets for international trust accounts are all held offshore, and then we use national systems to bring that money back onshore. So again, he's not going to go and bail out a foreign jurisdiction. He is going to very push hard on the America First system, which it's going to starve the private central bankers out of their process, which then forces them to make a selective move to try to buy up sections of the Ripple network in order to join the club.
Well, with that being said, if we're looking at the stock market and people that have, their life savings in the stock market, do you see after this crash or this collapse takes place, will there be a reevaluation or something that will make those people whole again, or are they just going to be out of luck?
No, they'll reevaluate everything. I mean, if my own personal opinion on this is that the American people are actually in the best possible position on the board, as CBDCs for the private central banking side for the Crown has already been initiated in England. So we're seeing this play out already over there, and the trauma that's happening there with their people right now. With the United States, they're playing the other side of the coin. Trump's asset-backed system, basically everything will tokenize by this summer. So the order has went out from all systems, especially on the private side, that said and gave the order to Schedule 1, Schedule 2, and Schedule 3 banks in North America, you must tokenize by a specific date. If you do not tokenize, we're just going to basically absorb you and do it anyway. And that's basically what they said. So Ripple has already got everything they need. They are going to be ushered in on all sides of the coin.
So what am I correct in understanding that in terms of the stock market, they're going to do away with the hypothecation of the stock market, tokenize it so that it has real value? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, all of the banks. So let's just say if you had Bank of America, and in Canada we would have like CIBC, TD, Scotiabank, places like that, and you guys have National Bank, Bank of America. All of those banks will actually tokenize their own process. But in order for them to convert securities or trade internationally, they have to use currently the SWIFT or SEPA systems. And SWIFT and SEPA can't do exactly what the blockchain could do. So believe it or not, the entire XRP, XLM, the whole Ripple Solana network was actually designed for private central banking to start with. So we're switching into a process that was pre-built for the matrix, for this changeover. Everything the public is seeing right now is basically just a psyop and a dressing up of the narrative.
And then in terms of the switch taking place, where do you see gold and silver in terms of value at that point?
Well, gold and silver will always be registered as a tier one asset no matter what. There are only 3 tier one assets in the world. Cash, but I don't mean cash as in fiat currency, so don't be confused with that. When we talk about cash as an actual commodity, that's as close to liquid assets as you can have. So when we talk about cash, it's always something that's liquid in the market. Again, so gold, cash, and sovereign bonds are listed as tier one assets on the international exchanges. So all of those are used, which is what our irrevocable trusts on the sovereign side actually give you. So we have all parts of the liquidity side that's needed for Ripple. So all of the market will just basically switch over. So when all the secured parties are in place, then there's millions of us between the United States and Canada. What happens is their private central banks that you see now with, say, the Rothschild system, they will not get the bailout that's required in order to survive. That means Trump will rely on our new banking system, our asset-backed securities, whether it's SPC Trust, Commonwealth Trust, SKB Trust, whoever it is, anybody that has asset-backed securities operating with the Ripple network, we will be the ones to step in and supply all the credit and asset-backed securities necessary to help the public with the transition.
Wow. Incredible. Just my head, can you see the smoke coming out of my ears, Sydney? Exactly. Wow. Well, I don't know what else to say. Alex, do you have anything else to add?
I first and foremost, Sydney, thanks for coming on. This is a subject on Sam's show that we've not ever dived heavily into, and I think you stepping in to bring your knowledge and experience. We've danced around the subject, but the powers that be sometimes want to stop lives from having these candid conversations, and I think today's been really successful. So I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us, and hope that you can come back again sometime. But yeah, Sam, it's a lot of information to digest. Everybody follow Sydney. Check out what he has to offer. Just so you know, Sam, I want you to look at that like number in the top corner of your screen. We have lots of people saying that.
We may be doing that tomorrow, given the situation today. But
when Sydney decides to sign off, buddy, there's no getting out.
Well, we'll see.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking to, like I said, start to get your feet wet and dip your toes in the water, great places to start. Like he said, the Redemption Series 6. The Strawman books, Meet Your Strawman. There are lots of resources out there, and they're not always at the top of the Google search. So you might have to load a few pages before you start finding some of the resources.
So, Sydney, lastly, before we move on, is there any advice you would give all these viewers, people that are fairly new to this? Anything in particular that they should or should not do?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, coming from the private central banking side of the game, I am going to tell anybody that's listening, if you have not set up a cold storage and your blockchain, and again, I heard you guys talking about, people talking about these QFS accounts. I just want to touch on that already because I want to definitely support exactly what you said. Do not buy into the QFS Trust Wallet account PSYOP propaganda that is all over the internet, TikTok, and social media. That was designed to scam people out of their money.
Yep.
The only thing that people need to do is manage their own trust assets, get a cold storage, get onto the Ripple network, and create your own vault with an infinite banking system, and you are set for life. If you're holding Ripple, you're good to go.
And you're talking about a cold wallet, or do you think there's some online options that are just as viable?
There are online options that are viable. In my process, we prefer the cold storage because when I file a UCC3 chattel property, I need to move a tangible item into the trust. And digital items, digital assets like BTC, ETH, XLM, XRP are not actual physical items. They're digital, but we shelter them inside of a physical item. That tangible item then gets filed as chattel property into the trust, protecting it and sheltering it from the state.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, and that's what we've been doing. I actually teach classes to my viewers where I teach them how to buy Bitcoin, how to move it onto a cold wallet. And so it sounds like you're agreeing with that. Cold storage is the best option.
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you from a private bank perspective, if last piece of advice, don't leave anything on the exchanges. When they get ready to make their move on the system, the private central bankers will try to buy the exchanges, not the coins, and they can try to wipe the exchanges in a last-ditch effort to go total scorched earth.
Right, right. Okay. Well, Sydney, thank you so much for being here. Will you let everybody know where they can find you on your social media or website?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, here you can get me on TikTok for as long as they'll leave my profile up there. I'm on my last account ban warning right now for all the info I was putting out. You can go to X, get me there, Sydney M. Brewer, at Sydney M. Brewer on X, or you can go to privatenightsconsulting.com, and that's where we teach this entire program to all of our participants.
Give us that website again.
Privatenightsconsulting.com.
KNIGHT?
KNIGHTS, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Gosh, well, Sydney, I can't thank you enough. I hope that you'll join us again soon in the near future. I just want to thank you for taking the time and thank you for responding to my message when I sent it. I wish you nothing but the best, and I look forward to having you on again.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for the questions and thanks for the commentary. Great. I love the work. Support it. 100%. You guys are on the right track. Love it.
Great. Thanks so much, Sydney. And everybody out there, thank you for being part of this. Alex, as always, thank you for being here. Everybody just have a wonderful day and tune in again tomorrow. We'll be back at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Thanks, everybody.